Okay, today we're going to be finishing up Hebrews chapter 7 by looking at verses 26 through 28 and Jesus' unique priesthood. So as you recall, we started with an overview of several reasons here why Jesus' priesthood is superior. And this last reason is that it's unique in verses 26 through 28. Sorry about that. So let's take a look. Let me read through it. For it was fitting for us to have such a high priest. You don't need to be looking at me while I'm reading this. Let's look at the Bible. For it was fitting for us to have such a high priest, holy, innocent, undefiled, separated from sinners and exalted above the heavens, who has no need, daily need, like those high priests, to offer up sacrifices, first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people, because he did this once for all time when he offered up himself. For the law appoints men as high priests who are weak, but the word of the oath, which came after the law, appoints a son who has been made perfect forever. So again, let's take this apart. Interesting, I like that word. It appears several times in the book of Hebrews. It is fitting, it is fitting, it is fitting. What's he mean by that? Well, I think what he's talking about is that in the sense that Jesus is the high priest that was always needed, always expected, was tirelessly, really we could say eternally, at work for us with the Father. He was innocent, undefiled, separated, and exalted above the heavens. He's kind of summing up everything he said about Jesus up to this point. Has no need, daily need, like those high priests, to offer up sacrifices for sins. So again, just this daily sacrifice was a constant reminder that the law itself was imperfect. It said earlier, it wasn't perfect. It's imperfect in the sense that it was never able to absolve the sinner permanently from sins. They had to go back day after day. And as we learned from the book of Romans, it's a constant reminder of our sinfulness, a constant alert that, yes, you sinned again, that you need something better than what you have in the Levites in the Mosaic law. So he said, once for all time, he offered up himself. Of course, he's talking about Jesus' crucifixion there. The high priest, the Levitical priest, on the one hand, were constantly offering sin offerings day after day after day. The Romans, when they took over Jerusalem, were so upset, I guess we could say, so shocked by the amount of blood that accumulated in the Temple Square and on the Temple Mount, that they put in Roman sewers to take the blood away from the Temple Mount. It was just so flooded all the time. But what we have is not a constant crucifixion of Jesus, as Roman Catholics would tell us that the Mass is a re-crucifixion of Jesus, but rather we have this one time, one perfect offering made for sin that does away with sin. Verse 28 says, the law appoints men, oath appoints a son. So again, another reason here, another uniqueness. Not only was it fitting in the sense that Jesus made all the requirements for this eternal priesthood, not only was it unique because he offered himself once for all time when he offered himself up, but also unique because it's different from the law, which appointed the Levitical priests, an oath, the oath of God, that you are my priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek in Psalm 110, verse 4. This divine oath is God's guarantee that all that's been said about Jesus' priesthood, this Melchizedekian priesthood, is true. And to doubt God is to make him far less than what he claims to be. It's to make a God in our own imagination that doesn't keep his promises and doesn't keep his oaths. It's to make up a God of our own imagination. It's idolatry to not believe him. So when we think about maybe the initial impact, how this might sounded to the first century hearers, it seems kind of weird to us that anybody would rely on the Levitical priesthood in face of all this evidence, that they would rely on the Mosaic law in face of everything that's been said. They would rely on those two things to draw them near to God, that they would rely on them. But, you don't want to have some, what I would call chronological or historical smugness, looking back on them and thinking, well, they just weren't smart, or they just didn't understand, or this was too much beyond them. I don't think it was, otherwise the writer wouldn't have been writing to them. I think what we see here is a reflection of the fact that these brothers and sisters from so long ago, members of the universal church, brothers and sisters who have put their faith in Jesus anywhere at any time, these brothers and sisters were under tremendous social and legal pressures. After we get past chapter 10, we'll see some of these things discussed. But for now, let's just understand that they're under tremendous pressure to return back to the old ways, to not be different. The ways that they were comfortable with, ways that might have seemed somewhat attractive to them. And the writer of the Hebrews is giving them every reason to understand and rely on Jesus. So let's be careful today in our own time that our hearts are careful every day to see whether our hope for salvation is totally and completely and fully in Christ. Not our church going, not our piety, not our daily prayers, our regular reading of his word. These are all fruit of a relationship with the Messiah. If you want to be strengthened in those fruit, what you need to do is go back to the source and have that purity and simplicity of devotion to Christ that I keep referring to. That's what we need, brothers and sisters.